My brothers and sisters, let me start by telling you a simple truth that cuts through the noise in your heart already knows what's right. Deep inside, beyond the distractions, beyond the noise of this world, there's a whisper calling you back to what is pure, what is noble, what brings real peace. But for so many, that voice has been drowned out, not by ignorance, but by pride. Pride is a thief. It steals your growth, it blinds your judgment, and it hardens your heart. It convinces you that change is weakness. It tells you that to admit you're wrong is to lose. It tells you that walking away from the crowd makes you less. But the truth is, the strongest people are not those who never fall, but those who rise after every fall, because their heart refuses to stay down. You see, the heart doesn't lie. It aches when you're off track. It tugs at you in moments of silence. It reminds you of who you really are beneath the image, beneath the opinions of others. But pride will convince you to silence. That voice says, what will they think? Pride says, don't show weakness. Pride says, you don't need to change. But deep down, you know better. You feel it. That uneasy restlessness when you settle for less than what's right. That inner battle every time you ignore the truth. That heaviness when you keep pretending you're fine. The most powerful decision you can make today is not to impress the world. It's to be honest with yourself. Because no matter how far you've drifted, no matter how many wrong turns you've taken, the way back always starts with one courageous step: humility. Humility isn't about self-hate or weakness. It's about recognizing that you're not above correction. It's about being big enough to admit when you're wrong and strong enough to change direction. How many times has your heart whispered, this isn't right? But your pride answered, stay silent. How many times have you felt the urge to apologize, to forgive, to step up? But pride convinced you to wait, to delay, to defend your ego instead of doing what you know is right. Pride keeps you stuck in cycles. It keeps you trapped in old mistakes. It won't let you move forward because it's too busy protecting a version of you that's not even real. The longer you listen to pride, the longer you delay peace. The longer you let your heart fight against your own decisions. You weren't made to live in that kind of conflict. You were made for clarity, for purpose, for peace. But none of that is possible if you won't get honest with what your heart is trying to tell you. Pride is the invisible wall that stands between where you are and where you're meant to be. It's subtle, often disguised as strength or confidence, but at its core, it's resistance to correction, resistance to truth, and resistance to growth. The heart is designed to guide you. It senses what's right, what's pure, what leads to peace. But pride interrupts that process. It speaks louder than your conscience. It drowns out wisdom, and it convinces you that admitting a mistake is a defeat. Pride says, you've got this figured out. Even when everything is falling apart, it refuses to let you acknowledge the discomfort that comes with growth. And so it convinces you to settle for comfort instead of character. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens when you're willing to be stretched, challenged, and corrected. But correction feels offensive to the proud. It feels like an attack instead of an opportunity. And so, pride makes you fight the very thing that's trying to help you become better. It blinds you to the areas of life that need refining. It shuts your ears when wise counsel is offered. It keeps your lips sealed when apology would heal. And the longer you let pride lead, the deeper the roots of stagnation grow. You stop evolving. You repeat old cycles. You protect your ego at the expense of your destiny. There's a reason your heart feels heavy when you ignore what's right. That weight isn't guilt without cause. It's a signal that you've chosen pride over truth, a signal that you're rejecting progress because it challenges your image. But your image can't lead you to purpose. Only truth can do that. And truth is often uncomfortable. It exposes flaws. It brings conviction, but it also brings freedom. And pride, though it promises strength, keeps you imprisoned by fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being seen as weak, fear of letting go of control. So many stay stuck not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack humility. They've heard what's right. They've felt it. Their heart has whispered it in silence again and again. But their pride keeps saying no. It's not that they don't know the way. It's that they don't want to admit they've been walking in the wrong direction. And that's the cost of pride. It trades progress for appearances. Keeps you standing still while pretending you're moving forward. Growth is a choice. But that choice requires courage. Courage to listen. Courage to reflect. Courage to change. Pride kills that courage. It convinces you that you don't need to grow. That you're fine as you are. That others need to change, not you. But the strongest people are the ones who choose truth over pride. Who allow their heart to lead even when their ego resists. Who value growth than being right. Pride may give you the last word, but it will never give you a better life. It may protect your image, but it will never protect your peace. And peace is only found on the other side of truth. There's a restlessness many people feel but can't quite explain. They smile in public, laugh with friends, keep up the image, but when they're alone, it's quiet and heavy. That heaviness is not random. It's not because life is too hard or the world is too loud. That heaviness often comes from one thing. They're not living in truth with themselves. They're ignoring what their heart is trying to tell them, and instead listening to the voice of pride that tells them to keep pretending. That voice says, "You're fine. Don't show weakness. Don't admit fault." But deep down, they know something is off. Something isn't settled. That's the war between the heart and the ego. And peace can't exist where lies are being lived. Honesty isn't about confessing everything to the world. It starts in the mirror. It starts with the ability to say to yourself, "This isn't right. I know not where I should be. I've made choices that don't match who I really am." That kind of honesty is powerful. It's freeing. But it's also rare because pride hates vulnerability. Pride wants to keep the illusion alive. It wants you to continue playing the part, dressing up the outside while the inside is crumbling. And many fall into that trap for years. They chase validation from others while starving for peace within. They build a life based on image, but the foundation is hollow. And eventually, no matter how well you've convinced others, you can't escape the quiet pull of your own heart. Peace doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being real. But pride blocks that pathway. It says, don't change, don't admit, don't ask for help. And so people stay stuck. They stay in relationships they shouldn't be in. They keep habits that are destroying them. They hold grudges that poison them daily. Why? Because their pride would rather suffer silently than surrender openly. But that suffering grows. It spreads. It affects your sleep, your focus, your mood, your purpose. It makes life feel heavy and joy feel distant. When you stop lying to yourself, everything changes. You may still have struggles, but you're no longer fighting your own reflection. You're no longer wasting energy pretending to be okay when you're not. That self-honesty gives you clarity, and clarity gives you strength. You begin to make decisions that align with your values instead of your image. You begin to speak from conviction instead of fear. You begin to surround yourself with people who challenge you instead of just cheer for your mask. But none of that is possible without honesty. And pride will do everything it can to keep you from it. It will tell you that honesty will cost you your reputation, that it will make you look weak, that people will judge you. But the truth is, the cost of staying fake is far greater than the cost of being real. Pride may protect your ego for a while, but it robs you of peace. And peace is never found in pretending. Peace is only found when the heart and the mind are finally on the same side. We often think of strength as loud, aggressive, or forceful. But true strength is quiet, steady, and rooted in humility. The world celebrates those who push, dominate, and assert, but many of those displays are fueled by insecurity, not power. Humility, on the other hand, isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about seeing yourself clearly without the need to inflate your importance or defend your every move. That clarity is strength. It allows you to lead without ego, serve without needing recognition, and grow without being paralyzed by correction. The person who walks in humility is not weak. They are anchored. They don't react out of pride. They respond out of understanding. They're not trying to prove anything to the world. They're too focused on becoming the best version of who they were meant to be. That kind of person can admit when they're wrong. Not because they're defeated, but because they know that every mistake is a chance to grow. They're not afraid of falling short because their value isn't tied to perfection. It's tied to progress. Pride tries to protect a fragile ego. It makes you defensive, rigid, and closed. You can't build anything lasting that way. But humility allows flexibility. It says, I'm still learning. I don't have all the answers. I can be corrected without feeling crushed. That mindset opens doors. It attracts real mentors, real friendships, real transformation. Humility listens before it speaks, thinks before it acts, and apologizes when necessary. That's not weakness, it's maturity. There is strength in not needing to win every argument. There is power in letting someone else have the spotlight. There is confidence in knowing your worth without needing others to constantly remind you. That is the quiet strength of humility. It doesn't chase attention. It doesn't demand applause. It just lives, speaks, and moves with integrity. The world is loud with people trying to look strong. But behind many of those loud voices are fragile hearts terrified of being exposed. The truly strong don't fear exposure. They've already faced themselves in the mirror. They've embraced their flaws and committed to grow. They don't mask their insecurities with pride. They face them with truth. Humility doesn't mean you settle or shrink. It means you lead from a deeper place. A place that isn't shaken by criticism or puffed up by praise. A place that knows who you are and who you're not, and is okay with both. That kind of strength can weather any storm because it doesn't rely on external validation. It's rooted in self-awareness, guided by purpose, and driven by character. In a world that tells you to always be loud, always be first, always be seen, humility says, let your life speak louder than your words. It's not about shrinking back. It's about standing tall without needing to look down on others. The humble don't need to compete because they know their path. They don't need to compare because they know their worth. They walk quietly, but their impact echoes loudly. We often think of strength as loud, aggressive, or forceful. But true strength is quiet, steady, and rooted in humility. The world celebrates those who push, dominate, and assert, but many of those displays are fueled by insecurity, not power. Humility, on the other hand, isn't about thinking less of yourself. It's about seeing yourself clearly, without the need to inflate your importance or defend your every move. That clarity is strength. It allows you to lead without ego, serve without needing recognition, and grow without being paralyzed by correction. The person who walks in humility is not weak. They are anchored. They don't react out of pride. They respond out of understanding. They're not trying to prove anything to the world. They're too focused on becoming the best version of who they were meant to be. That kind of person can admit when they're wrong, not because they're defeated, but because they know that every mistake is a chance to grow. They're not afraid of falling short because their value isn't tied to perfection. It's tied to progress. Pride tries to protect a fragile ego. It makes you defensive, rigid, and closed. You can't build anything lasting that way, but humility allows flexibility. It says, I'm still learning. I don't have all the answers. I can be corrected without feeling crushed. That mindset opens doors. It attracts real mentors, friendships, real transformation. Humility listens before it speaks, thinks before it acts, and apologizes when necessary. That's not weakness, it's maturity. There is strength in not needing to win every argument. There is power in letting someone else have the spotlight. There is confidence in knowing your worth without needing others to constantly remind you. That is the quiet strength of humility. It doesn't chase attention. It doesn't demand applause. It just lives, speaks, and moves with integrity. The world is loud with people trying to look strong, but behind many of those loud voices are fragile hearts terrified of being exposed. The truly strong don't fear exposure. They've already faced themselves in the mirror. They've embraced their flaws and committed to grow. They don't mask their insecurities with pride. They face them with truth. Humility doesn't mean you settle or shrink. It means you lead from a deeper place, a place that isn't shaken by criticism or puffed up by praise, a place that knows who you are and who you're not, and is okay with both. That kind of strength can weather any storm because it doesn't rely on external validation. It's rooted in self-awareness, guided by purpose, and driven by character. In a world that tells you to always be loud, always be first, always be seen, humility says, let your life speak louder than your words. It's not about shrinking back, it's about standing tall without needing to look down on others. The humble don't need to compete because they know their path. They don't need to compare because they know their worth. They walk quietly, but their impact echoes loudly. It's easy to point fingers outward, to blame the culture, the times, the government, or even other people in the faith community. But the hard truth is this transformation doesn't begin out there. It starts inside. When individuals lose their conviction, when they compromise their values for convenience, when they start making decisions based on popularity rather than principle, the result is always decline. Not just personal, but collective. A community cannot be strong when its people are living divided within themselves. And that division begins the moment we trade in a conviction for external comfort. Conviction is that still voice inside that tells you the truth even when it hurts. It's the standard you hold yourself to even when no one is watching. And it's easy to lose when you're constantly being told to relax, to loosen up, to not take things too seriously. But once conviction fades, discipline follows. Then comes apathy. Then comes compromise, disguise, growth, or love. And before long, what was once a clear, unshakable belief turns into vague, feel-good philosophies that carry no power to truly change lives. The world doesn't need more people who simply go along to get along. It needs people who are so grounded in their beliefs that they become immovable, even when everything around them is shifting. That kind of conviction doesn't make you rigid. It makes you reliable. It makes you someone others can look to in times of confusion. But conviction is costly. It means saying no when everyone else is saying yes. It means standing alone at times. It means being misunderstood, even criticized. But the cost of losing it is far greater. When you don't know what you stand for, you'll fall for anything. And that's where many have ended up. Not because they never had the truth, but because they were too afraid to defend it. They softened their message to be accepted. They ignored their conscience to stay relevant. And now, instead of leading the culture, they're being led by it. Instead of being the example, they're wrecking the noise. And deep down, there's no peace in that. Because no matter how much the world applauds you, if you've silenced your conviction, you'll always feel the weight of that compromise. Conviction gives you a backbone. It gives your words weight and your actions direction. Without it, life becomes a series of reactions, doing whatever feels good in the moment or whatever makes others happy. But when you live from conviction, you don't bend to every trend. You don't twist the truth to fit the moment. You stay ensured, and people may not always agree with you, but they will respect you. Because there's something powerful about someone who lives with consistency and clarity. When a community of people lives without conviction, it loses its power to influence. It becomes a mirror of the culture, not a light in the darkness. And that's what's at stake. Not just personal integrity, but the ability to impact others. Because when conviction is lost, truth becomes negotiable, and when truth is negotiable, purpose disappears. Entertainment has replaced conviction in many spaces once defined by purpose. The goal used to be transformation. Now it's attention. The mission was once about building people with depth. Now it's about filling seats and gaining applause. But there's a cost to that shift. When the focus moves from truth to trends, from meaning to momentary excitement, people may feel good for a while, but they leave unchanged. The crowd may grow louder, but the impact grows weaker. And the result is a generation that's stimulated, not strengthened, entertained, not equipped, inspired for a few minutes, but lost for a lifetime. There's a difference between reaching people and pleasing people. One speaks to the soul, the other pacifies the senses. Entertainment might hold someone's attention, but it doesn't hold their heart. It doesn't give them the tools to stand when life gets hard. It doesn't teach discipline, courage, or endurance. It just gives a temporary escape. But real change doesn't happen in the escape. It happens in the challenge, in the discomfort, in the truth that cuts deep enough to call a person higher. And when that truth is exchanged for emotional high points, people are left with an experience that fades the moment the music stops. A community built on entertainment doesn't grow. It swells. Numbers may increase, but maturity doesn't. Because entertainment demands nothing. It never offends. You never confronts, never sacrifices. It only asks for your attention and then lets you walk away the same. But truth is different. Truth challenges. It stretches. It calls out what needs to be dealt with. And because of that, it changes people from the inside out. That's the difference between popularity and purpose. One feeds the ego. The other builds the soul. We live in an age where screens have become pulpits and performance has become the message. And while there's nothing wrong with being engaging, when engagement becomes more important than authenticity, the message gets lost. People walk away remembering the show but forgetting the standard. And slowly, without realizing it, entertainment becomes a replacement for the very thing that was meant to anchor and guide lives. It becomes a feel-good moment, not a life-changing encounter. People are desperate for more than hype. They're hungry for depth. But they'll only find it when the focus shifts from crowd-pleasing to soul-reaching. That means returning to honesty. That means embracing messages that may not always be comfortable but are always necessary. That means choosing substance over style, even when style draws a bigger crowd. Because at the end of the day, what good is a full room if every person walks out with an empty heart? Entertainment might draw people in, but only truth keeps them grounded. And the longer we rely on performance instead of principle, the more we'll see the results in broken lives, shallow commitments, and confused hearts. The task isn't to be the most entertaining, it's to be the most faithful to what actually transforms. Accountability isn't a punishment, it's protection. In a world where people chase autonomy and self-definition, accountability feels restrictive, but it's actually the structure that builds strength. Without accountability, no system thrives. Marriages fail, businesses collapse, communities fragment, individuals drift. We all need guardrails, not because we are weak, but because we are human. Left to ourselves, we justify what's convenient, we excuse what's comfortable, and we eventually become blind to the very things that are pulling us down. That's why real accountability isn't optional. It's essential. When people resist accountability, they're often resisting the discomfort of being corrected. But correction, when given and received with the right spirit, is one of the greatest gifts anyone can receive. It's how blind spots become visible. It's how wisdom is transferred. It's how character is shaped. No one rises in life without being challenged, without someone looking them in the eye and saying, "You're better than that," or "This direction will destroy you." The most dangerous place to be isn't under scrutiny. It's in isolation, where no one speaks truth to your life and you answer to no one but yourself. A community that avoids accountability will always look good on the surface while quietly decaying underneath. People may smile, nod, and say the right things, but behind closed doors, compromises are made and no one has the courage to confront them. Over time, silence becomes complicity. When leaders aren't held accountable, they begin to believe they are above the standard they were once called to uphold. When individuals aren't accountable, they drift into habits that once would have made them tremble. Slowly, what was once unacceptable becomes normal, and no one dares say a word. Accountability builds trust. It says, "I value truth more than comfort. I'd rather be corrected than be fake. I'd rather be called out than called a hypocrite." People may not like confrontation, but deep down they respect those who care enough to speak up. Because in a world full of flattery and passive silence, truth stands out. It sharpens. It refines, it anchors people in reality and prevents them from getting lost in illusion. Being accountable doesn't mean living in fear. It means living with integrity. It means knowing there are people in your life who care enough to question you, challenge you, and walk with you through the hard seasons. That kind of structure isn't bondage. It's freedom. It frees you from the chaos of impulsive choices. It frees you from the weight of secrets. It frees you from becoming someone you never intended to be. A culture that lacks accountability cannot produce leaders of character, families of strength, or communities of substance. Without it, people drift towards self-preservation, not self-improvement. They choose applause over honesty, comfort over growth, and independence over wisdom. But when accountability is present, even the strongest among us stay grounded. It keeps people honest. It reminds them of who they said they wanted to become. It pulls them back when pride starts to pull them away. And it creates a culture where truth matters more than image.